You are sitting on your couch on the other side of the world, and for $50, you just bought a piece of a house in Detroit. No mortgage application, no bank, no flight to America, just a few clicks on a website that promised you the future of real estate. Your $50 becomes a token. That token becomes a claim on rent. And every week, like clockwork, a small payment lands in your wallet. It feels like you cracked the code that used to be reserved for landlords with cash and connections. It wasn't a code. It was a story, and the story was already falling apart in the houses you never saw. The company behind it was called Realty, built by two brothers, Gene Mark and Remy Jacobson, who had already made their name mining Bitcoin before they turned to real estate. Their pitch was elegant. Take a rental property, put it inside a limited liability company, then sell digital tokens representing shares of that LLC to investors anywhere in the world, as long as they didn't live in the United States. By 2019, they were calling themselves the inventors of the entire industry. Within 5 years, they had listed more than 700 properties across 9 states, most of them in Detroit, and had distributed $13 million in rent to over 10,000 token holders. On paper, this looked like democratized ownership. In practice, it depended on something much older than blockchain, somebody actually maintaining the buildings. Here's what the pitch never made clear. Before a single dollar of rent ever reached an investor, Realty had already taken its cut, 10% of the money raised to buy the property. 2% of the rental income every single year after that. 10% again if the property was ever sold. Meanwhile, the investors were told they could earn returns north of 16%, an eye-popping number, especially when the buy-in was as low as $50. Real estate has always run on the gap between what a property brings in and what it costs to run. Realty simply put a token on top of that gap and sold the top of it to people who would never see the building, never smell the mold, never know if the numbers were true. And the numbers, according to the people managing these houses, were not true. Doug McEwen ran roughly a dozen Realty properties in Cleveland until he was fired in 2024. He described homes where legacy tenants moved out and were never replaced because there was no money to fix a leaking roof or a failing furnace. His monthly statements told the real story. One property, thousands of dollars in the red. A portfolio of 13 homes, nearly $9,000 in losses in a single month. Yet an investor who had put money into some of those same vacant, money-losing properties showed reporters payouts of 10 to 15%, arriving right on schedule. Nobody could explain where that money actually came from. Investigators later found 20 properties where Realty was collecting funds and paying returns on houses the company did not even own. This is the trap that hides inside every yield that looks too smooth to be real. When a landlord pays money out that a property never earned, that money has to come from somewhere else, usually new investors coming in behind the old ones. Ask yourself what happens the moment new money stops arriving. In July of 2025, the city of Detroit sued Realty and the Jacobsons over hundreds of code violations, citing gas leaks, collapsing bathroom floors, and homes tenants said had gone unrepaired for years. Tamar Yorkcook, a lawyer in the city's law department, spent months untangling more than 160 separate LLCs the company had used to buy properties. And what she found behind that paperwork was, in her words, cruelty that didn't need to exist. A judge issued a temporary restraining order freezing Realty's ability to collect rent or evict tenants in the city, and the company's largest source of cash simply stopped. From there, the collapse moved fast. Realty told investors it was pausing payments altogether. Nearly 500 French investors, holding a combined $34 million in tokens, organized a criminal complaint against the Jacobsons, aiming for prosecution in both France and the United States. The company that once called itself the founder of an industry began liquidating its entire portfolio, an estimated $140 million in properties, sold off to settle debts and lawsuits it could no longer outrun. Some investors say they'll write off their tokens as a loss and move on. Some tenants are still living under leaking ceilings, waiting to find out who, if anyone, will ever be held responsible. You were sold a claim ticket for a coat you never saw hanging in the closet. That's what tokenization really is, a receipt for someone else's promise. The technology behind it was never really the problem. The problem was the same one landlords have faced for 100 years. A building only pays you back if somebody is actually taking care of it. No blockchain has ever fixed a roof.